governor says his rollout of the universal pre-K program is going great, which is news to the school districts that just sued him over it today.
We wish this were the rosy picture that the governor portrays it to be.
Colorado's medical regulators decide how they're going to deal with providers who offer so-called abortion reversals. The mayor of Aurora's clumsy attempt to give himself more power has run into a legal challenge. And we're one-on-one with Denver's mayor, talking about why he's dropping the plan to have security contractors take over care for migrants. That's tonight on Next.
Doing preschool for the first time is hard, whether you are a 4-year-old or a governor. Governor Polis's campaign promise of universal pre-K is now dealing with upset families, frustrated providers, and for the second day in a row, a new lawsuit. This time, it's school districts suing. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
This story on preschool needs to start with some alphabet acronyms that you're about to hear. IEP means Individualized Education Program for students that require special education. SPED means special education. UPK stands for Universal Preschool. And you need to know the number 6. 6 school districts are represented in this room and have sued Democratic Governor Jared Polis and several state education departments over UPK.
We wish this were the rosy picture that the governor portrays it to be.
UPK is in its first year. No cost half-day preschool for any 4-year-old. It requires families to sign up through a state website called BridgeCare. Using an algorithm, BridgeCare matches a student to a preschool.
To have an algorithm be matching kids completely bypasses what's called the Individualized Education Program, or IEP, process. And that's in federal law.
The lawsuit contends that local school districts, like 27J in Adams, Broomfield, and Weld counties, are put at risk of lawsuits if the state matches a student to a preschool that cannot provide the proper IEP education.
They are getting acceptance letters saying you are placed at this school. We have to go in on the back end and contact families and say, actually, that's not correct. You need to go to a different school because that's where your child's IEP can be implemented.
The lawsuit asks a judge to give the power back to districts to place students instead of a state algorithm.
So it's undoing horrible messaging and miscommunication and misinformation from BridgeCare.
Because of the way the laws are, the school district of the local county has to provide the SPED services regardless of where they're attending for their preschool.
The superintendent of Harrison School District in Colorado Springs said many of the families in her district are the ones who thought they were getting full-day preschool this year until they were told late last month they were only getting half-day funding. The lawsuit also asks a judge to force the state to pay full-day funding this year for those most needy families.
Parents were told if they have at-risk factors, they would qualify for up to 30 hours, which for our district would be most of our students.
When we started doing the math on the funding, we were really concerned that the funding wasn't going to materialize in the way that it was being promised.
Cherry Creek School District is the largest in the lawsuit. It is not offering full-day preschool because the district predicted the math predicament.
We've essentially been ignored.
In this March 14th letter, the director of early childhood was warned by state education associations about breaking the law with special education students. That letter said, quote, if students with disabilities are not identified in a timely fashion, there is the potential for local school districts to be in violation of federal law. At an unrelated preschool event today, Polis said special education will benefit by the number of preschoolers signing up this year.
I think it'll help. The fact that more kids are entering preschool will help identify students with learning needs earlier that might have fallen through the cracks.
We have the rules being set up in a way that keeps school districts from meeting their ethical obligations and their legal obligations.
Control. The state took the control and responsibility of who gets placed where. The local districts in this lawsuit are saying that puts them at most risk of lawsuits with none of the responsibility to prevent that. And the way the system works, Kyle, is parents apply for preschool, they choose several options, and then wait to be matched. The lawsuit spells out several districts that say, we are rejecting some of those matches, keeping spots open just in case a special education student comes through later on.
It seems like this is going to become increasingly difficult for the governor to pretend like there's not a problem here. Like, it was fairly easy, no offense, for him to be like, just go away, Marshall, quit making noise about this. Oh, 9,000 parents. Okay, parents, you quit making noise. Oh, you school districts. Now, like, all of a sudden, and plus the providers that are talking about funding issues with it, there's a lot of people saying, like, hey, I understand that this is the first time we're doing this, but it's full of holes.
It's the school districts that I think that are like maybe waking people up to this, because they're like, We've been doing this the whole time with kindergarten. And when we created half-day or full-day kindergarten, you didn't create a new state department for that. We just did what we normally did. Now you created this kindergarten system, and you created a state department instead of just using what we have always done as experts. And now when the call is coming from inside, it's like, oh, maybe there's something there.
It's always sunny in Polis's view, at least for now. We'll see how long that weather lasts. Marshall, thank you. Student test scores in Colorado are finally inching back up to where they were before the pandemic. The results, though, suggest some students are being left behind. On average, elementary students are scoring better on reading and math assessments than they did last year. 3rd through 5th grades, math scores are almost back to pre-pandemic levels. Boys are gaining ground on girls across the board, suggests that girls are having a harder time for some reason adjusting to post-pandemic learning. The state's also seeing slower recovery among traditionally disadvantaged groups, so students of color, students with disabilities, students from low-income homes. Some of the lowest scores continue to be students who are still learning English. Literacy scores among elementary school students who are tested in Spanish, they speak Spanish, they test in Spanish, those scores fell below 20% proficiency, and they're still far behind where they were pre-pandemic.
And so that's going to be an area of intensive focus, because we know that in the absence of doing that, these are students who are very capable and are not going to be ready for the next grade. They're not going to be ready for a career. They're not going to be ready for post-secondary studies in college.
This is only the second year post-pandemic that Colorado's done traditional state assessments. The tests were canceled in 2020. They were modified in 2021. Colorado's state medical board says that providers who assist with so-called abortion reversals could face investigation and discipline. This is a rare line in the sand being drawn by the medical board, but it stops short of what Democrats in the state legislature wanted. So they had passed a law earlier this year banning abortion reversals. That's when a high dose of hormones is taken in an attempt to reverse a medication abortion. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists say this procedure is not based on scientific evidence. The medical board, though, has the final say on Colorado's rules. And today, they said that they do not consider so-called abortion reversals a generally accepted practice, but they're not automatically going to punish providers for it. Instead, they'll investigate on a case-by-case basis. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman's attempt to give Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman more power is now in the hands of a judge. The mayor's plan to ask voters to turn Aurora into a strong mayor city like Denver faces a legal challenge. Our Steve Steger explains.
When Aurora County District Court Judge Elizabeth Voles ordered cameras be allowed in court for a hearing Thursday afternoon, she specifically noted recording of audio wasn't allowed. She may have been doing you a favor. This nearly 2-hour hearing on Aurora's election laws was chewy and dense, but no less important.
We believe it conclusively demonstrated that thousands of Aurora voters were duped into signing a misleading, purposefully misleading petition.
Former Aurora City Council member Charlie Richardson is suing the people who initiated the ballot measure and the city, arguing this measure that would eliminate the city manager in Aurora and make the mayor the head of the government violates state law over how much you can cram into a ballot measure. State law requires you keep it to a single subject.
Well, voters are smart when they're presented a straightforward proposal.
Richardson argues this measure also changes the mayor's salary, changes council salaries, takes away some power from city council, and changes term limits for city council members.
This is so sweeping that the council's role is so diminished.
First of all, we don't believe Aurora has a single subject requirement on initiatives.
Suzanne Taheri is the lawyer for the group of citizens who proposed the ballot measure.
Now the mayor's duties have gone up. The city council duties have also changed.
She argues all of this is a single subject.
But everything you've mentioned is related to the idea that we're changing from a city manager form of government where the city manager is in charge of things, and we're empowering a mayor who's accountable to the voters to do those same things.
Taheri says voters are smart enough to understand.
They understand what Denver looks like. They understand what Colorado Springs looks like. They understand the difference in the systems of government. They understand that there are cities that are governed essentially by a city manager, and they understand that there are cities that are governed by a mayor.
So Richardson is also arguing that the city clerk wasn't clear enough when she wrote the ballot language for this issue. So he's asking the judge if the judge would allow the issue to move forward to change that language presented to voters to include all of the other items, like increasing the mayor's salary, decreasing the council's salary, taking power away from council and the term limits. The judge has said that she'll have a ruling by Monday. Lots to think about over the weekend.
And Steve, this is a significant political battle, if for no other reason than Colorado Republicans don't have a lot of things that they think that they can win in 2023 and 2024. So they're expected to pour a lot of money and effort into getting Kaufman reelected, expanding his powers.
Yeah, and you can tell how much money is already involved in this with the fact that there was such a robust court presence kind of defending this issue. This is a big deal, and they're going to try to work to keep things the way they are. They're trying to prevent also issues down the road. Tahiri says they should handle this like the state legislature. If it's a single subject issue, you don't challenge it when it's being proposed in the legislature. You challenge it after it's already over and done with. That would be interesting, too, because you've already had the people speak. So,
Steve Steger reporting with a tie on because he went to court.
I did.
He's a gentleman. Thank you, Steve.
So we've created a new structure for how we're going to approach services to migrants.
Not want this international security corporation handling the city's migrant response. Tells us he wants to go more local. And next, viewers, ask a good question. Why is Colorado's best-known election denier spreading her message out of state this week instead of, say, being under house arrest? One of former Denver Mayor Michael Hancock's last ideas in office was to turn over the city's migrant response to an international corporation best known for its armed security guards. That was one of the first ideas tossed aside by Denver's new mayor, Mike Johnston. He tells our Angeline McCall he wants to keep that migrant effort local, run by the people who have been doing the work.
You've been in office for about 30 days. What have you done so far regarding migrants?
Yeah, we have a couple of key steps we've taken on migrants. One is we've created a new structure for how we're going to approach services to migrants. As you may remember, there was a proposal for a large contract to guard our world that the City Council decided not to go forward with. We're instead preparing to issue a new RFP that will be focused much more on small, local, community-based nonprofits that can provide services.
Do you have any idea how quickly that they would receive that funding? Because I've spoken to a lot of the main nonprofits that work with migrants, and they say that they're totally out of funding, and up to date, they really haven't received any money from the city.
Yeah, so we've had a real problem with some of the federal reimbursement on these dollars. But one of the things we want to do is to be able to be a better partner to be able to pay nonprofit partners more quickly. Right now, it's been hard to wait on reimbursement from the federal government. So what we have to do often is go ahead and pay the bill proactively, even before we get reimbursement dollars.
Do you realistically see, obviously it's a federal issue, right, when it comes to work permits, do you see Denver being in a position where you guys can create a local work permitting program?
We're going to put everything on the table. So we're going to try creatively to see what we can do with the federal government, what we can do with the state government. And for me, what this underscores is one of the big areas of focus we have is that I've met with Secretary Mayorkas and been talking with the federal government about two needs that we have. One is reimbursement for services, but the second is really temporary protective status so people can get access to work.
Johnson did hold listening sessions as well with the transition team about different topics, migrants being one of them. He says feedback from those meetings resulted in his administration planning to have at least one person overseeing this issue specifically.
Angela, you've been reporting on this for months, and it's interesting. I mean, you've been giving it kind of constant attention here locally, but the way that the national attention on this issue ebbs and flows, and we're kind of at a low point now because the flow of people across the southern border has slowed down considerably.
Yeah, it really has. During the summer, we were seeing about 30 people every day. And then when, it's numbers as low as that, people don't really pay attention until there's this, a large group of people at the border wanting to get in. Right now, we're seeing numbers about 80 per day. That's what they were about yesterday. So at this point, it ebbs and flows. And right now, Mayor Johnson's in a position where, he wants to get ahead of it, but, former Mayor Hancock was in a position where he was right in the intensity of it.
Sure.
And so I guess we'll see what happens if there's more cycles with this migration that we've been seeing.
Yeah, he has the luxury of getting his hands around it at a low point. All right, Angeline, thank you very much. We are getting some feedback from a good number of Next viewers, quite surprised to see Colorado's best-known election denier speaking at an event in Missouri yesterday, because they were saying, well, isn't Tina Peters supposed to be under house arrest or something? What's she doing at an election deniers conference in Missouri? The one where today, MyPillow guy Mike Lindell unveiled his plan from God to stop election fraud. Drones in the sky over every polling place looking for Wi-Fi connections. Anyway, back to Tina Peters. The former Republican clerk from Mesa County is awaiting a felony trial on charges that she tampered with voting systems while searching for voter fraud. Prosecutors told us today that Peters is allowed to leave the state so long as she notifies the court ahead of time. As for her 4-month house arrest sentence for another recent conviction, that sentence has not started yet because she's appealing it.
Well, we had another hot day out there as we made it to 94 degrees today in Denver. A live look over downtown Denver showing quite a bit of cloud cover, but we are still dry at DIA, 89 degrees there. Dew points down to 49 degrees, so the weather actually feels pretty dry. We have winds gusting in from the south-southeast at around 22 miles per hour, but a lot like what we saw yesterday, all of the action in the sky is falling across western and central portions of the state, where we are still seeing these brief but scattered showers and storms, some of them starting to reach across far southern portions of the Front Range and even into foothills portions as you move your way further north. But we do have an air quality alert in effect across the Front Range urban corridor. This is going to be for high levels of ozone until midnight tonight. As far as these storms are concerned, we do have general thunderstorm risks across central and western portions of the state, and then across far southern portions of the Front Range here, where, again, most of these storms are going to be pretty brief. The biggest issues are just going to be those gusty winds and quick downpours. In the meantime, for us here in Denver, we're going to stay pretty dry, partly cloudy, overnight lows near 66 degrees, a little breezy, but hot weather is sticking around as we're in the middle 90s all the way through the first portions of next week. We finally start to cool down midweek.
Thank you, Lauren. The Denver airport's newest carrier is in luck because they are going to pocket some major incentives for flying back and forth from Dublin. And Denverites will soon get billed for sidewalks. So you're asking, when and where do those repairs begin? That's next. Denver's airport is celebrating new nonstop service from Denver to Dublin, Ireland, and the carrier is celebrating because they're going to make bank in incentives. Aer Lingus will provide that direct flight, become the 24th airline out at DIA. The airport estimates the new service to Dublin will bring in more than $65 million for the state economy and create 400 new jobs. This is part of the airport's long-running effort to bring in as many international carriers as possible. They will pay to get them here. According to DIA, Aer Lingus stands to make an additional $6 million in incentives alone on that new service. $6 million is nothing compared to what DIA would shell out to finally get service to Africa. A new carrier willing to provide daily direct service to Africa could get $14 million.
Our next question comes from Richard in Denver. He wanted to check in on the city's plans for sidewalk repairs because voters delegated that responsibility to the city instead of property owners last November.
Denver is getting ready to assess property owners for sidewalk repair. My question is, how do they determine who's first in line to get their sidewalks fixed?
That's a good question, Richard. So, well, remember, 2022, Denver voters passed an ordinance that shifted the financial responsibility for sidewalk repairs from individual property owners to the city and city taxpayers, generally speaking. But those repairs won't start until 2024, and the city's still putting together the repair schedule. They told us the priority on the repairs will go to high-traffic pedestrian areas and public transit corridors, and then to places like schools and healthcare centers. Property owners can expect to start seeing those bills for sidewalks in January. We will have your feedback right here next. There it is. Thanks. Leslie writes in about Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman saying he's not an Auroran, he's just looking for a job and power. Leslie, Mike Kaufman's Aurora through and through. He moved there at age 9, went to APS, worked there through the 80s. No. He's Aurora for sure. See you next time.